another series for our Author Spotlight series. I'm excited for this next interview. My name is Hilary Maruzak. I'm the Social Media Director here at Journal of Neuroscience Research, and I'm excited to introduce one of our interns, Dr. Salahuddin Mohammed, who will be doing today's interview.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Maruzak, and thank you, Mrs. Kroon, for joining us. My name is Salahuddin Mohammed. I am a postdoctoral associate at the Yale University and presently a social media intern for JNR. Today, we are highlighting an exciting paper published in JNR June 2000 issue entitled "The Role of Sex in the Association Between Cannabis Use and the Working Memory-Related Brain Activity." We invited the first author trainee, Mrs. Kroon, to talk us more about this paper. Something more about Mrs. Kroon. She is a PhD candidate at the Department of Psychology at the University of Amsterdam. Her research interests mostly focus on complex interactions between brain and behavior in substance use disorders, primarily focusing on cannabis use. More specifically, she is interested in using different methods to help us explore these complex interactions. Thank you for joining us. Let's get right into it. To start off, would you mind please telling us the most exciting thing about your paper?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Honestly, to me, the most exciting thing about our research was that we finally had a very big sample to combine into a really nice paper. We combined data from different previous research, doing the exact same task into the same group to make sure that we had a really nice sample to explore some new things. And what was really exciting to me was that while we always expect that people with cannabis use disorder have cognitive problems, and we would expect to see that in our working memory task, this is often not found. And what we now found with a bigger sample is that we actually see that when the difficulty of the task increases, that the cannabis users actually start to perform worse, which is something we always expected, but now we can finally confirm using this sample. And I've actually already replicated with a new sample now, which is really exciting. And also, when looking at the MRI results, they were pretty unexpected, because normally we would feel that probably if we look at cognitive tasks, we would expect differences in executive control networks that are either overactivated or underactivated. But what we now found is that there's actually a difference in default mode network activation when the difficulty of the task increases. So you would expect that default mode network activity goes down when you need to engage in a cognitive task. And what we see is that that does indeed happen. Your default mode network activity reduces when the task gets more complex, but that reduction is smaller in the cannabis users, which could indicate that there's some like mislocation of like resource allocation happening that might affect their performance. So that's kind of exciting to me. Also some disappointment though that we didn't find any sex differences that we were expecting to find. But on the other hand, it's a really nice opportunity, I think, that now with bigger samples, even in cannabis use, which is a research field that has primarily focused on men in like the last decades, it's really exciting to actually at least test the gender differences and the interaction, in our case, sex differences in this paper, but I'm interested in both, of course.
Thank you, Dr. Kroon, for walking us through the most exciting part. Let's talk about the most innovative part of your project.
Yeah, I think actually with this one, it's mostly about the sample size. We had a sample of 189 before exclusions, I think, which is a really nice sample for MRI research. And I think we really need to move towards increasing those sample sizes and putting a lot of effort into that to not be underpowered to detect the effects we hypothesize. So I think it's really nice that we had the opportunity to replicate earlier findings, even though that sounds boring to a lot of people. I think replication is really important, and it's really nice to do that with a bigger sample. And it also really opens up new windows to look indeed at like sex and gender differences, and also more other individual differences that could be detected in a bigger sample that can't be in really small ones. So I would really also invite others that if you have data, the methods have improved so much that we can easily combine different data sets into larger sets to explore those more complex interactions and more difficult questions to answer on our own. And yeah, I think that's really great about this part of the project.
Great. Thank you for sharing those insights, Mrs. Kroon. Let's shift gears a bit and talk more about the studies you're kind of doing right now and the future projects you have in your mind for this project.
Yeah, I think what I'm focusing on now is primarily finishing up my PhD research, but there's a lot of interesting things going on. When looking at like the sex and gender differences I'm interested in, we have conducted a study recently for which a preprint is available now about cannabis use disorder symptoms. Doing a network analysis with those symptoms to see whether there's gender differences in how symptoms of cannabis use disorder interact. Because we know that there's a lot of sex and gender differences in how people experience their cannabis use, how fast they transition into dependence, how the endocannabinoid system works, but we don't really know how that relates to their symptomology. We also looked at how presence of different comorbidities relates to those symptoms. And we were really excited to find that indeed, while the symptoms of cannabis use disorder seem to be kind of similar in men and women and interact in a similar way, the way comorbidities like anxiety disorders and mood disorders interact with cannabis use is different for men and women, which could really be important to inform treatment. So that's really exciting. And on a more neuroimaging level, we're currently working on combining a lot of resting state data from previous study and also looking at both gender differences and cultural differences in those processes, primarily focusing on the main networks involved in dependence, such as the executive, the salience, and the default mode network. So I'm really excited about those projects. And there's a lot of fun stuff ahead. So really excited.
Thank you, Mrs. Kroon. That was really interesting to hear from you about your future goals. And one last thing on the questions we have is, tell us more about yourself and the career goals.
Yeah, of course, my first aim now is to just finish up my PhD research in the upcoming year, but I'm confident that will all be fine. So after that, it's primarily, I really hope to find a nice postdoctoral research position and also have the opportunity to do more teaching, because I really enjoy that part of academia, both teaching and doing my own research. And I'm really interested in a lot of different methodologies and how that can help us explore different complexities in substance use disorders, because I think substance use disorders on an individual level are already complex. And if we then try to compare all those complex individuals in bigger samples, there's so much complexity that there's just a lot of things to explore still. And I think we should really focus on the interactions between for example, external factors like culture and social attitudes, but also internal factors like gender and cognition, and how those interact with the brain to actually develop a substance use disorder. So I really hope that I have the opportunity to dive further into that in the upcoming years.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Kroon. That sums our interview, and thank you, Dr. Murasek, for providing me an opportunity to conduct this author spotlight.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you both, and well done and congratulations, and good luck on finishing up that PhD. I called you Dr. Kroon by accident, but it looks like you're not too far away from that. So thank you so much for doing one of our trainee spotlight interviews, and excellent job to Dr. Mohammed for putting this together. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.